A personal security guard for Katt Williams has been detained and charged in relation to a shooting that resulted in death. Williams' own product company is connected to the building where the shooting took place. And for some reason, that might only be the third most unsettling aspect of the entire conflict. The narrative has progressed much beyond comedic phases and podcast segments by this point. Take a look at what's already on the table. The gun incident from 2018, for which there is a police report. Store camera showed a chase without a weapon, and 3 persons provided 3 separate accounts. Then there was the Netflix roast on May 10, 2026, in which Kevin Hart pleaded for peace and shook Katt Williams' hand. Later that evening, he acknowledged that it was some of his best acting to date, but he claimed he had no intention of doing so. Then there was Jonathan Jackson's $12 million lawsuit, which claims that more than a year later, on May 17, 2019, Hart's team used Microsoft Word to manufacture an email dated April 27, 2018. People are no longer actually watching the jokes at this time. People are attempting to determine who is lying, who is acting, and whether the next altercation will take place in a parking lot, a courthouse, or an area completely devoid of cameras. The house was occupied by 2 persons. It's clear that this situation escalated into aggressive. The defendant shot the victim several times with a shotgun. He made use of a 12-gauge. Slugs were the ammunition of choice. Let's start with the gun incident since it has subtly turned into the menace that lies beneath everything else. Williams said to the police that a gun was aimed at his face. Wanda Smith's husband, Lamora Sears, claimed that his revolver only came loose from his waistband as he was pursuing Williams. According to a club security guard who claimed to have witnessed the entire event, he never once saw a gun. The chase was captured on store footage, but there was no weapon. Depending on the video evidence, police said charges could still be brought. That was 7 years ago. There were never any charges. However, the uncertainty around it is still important because any future physical altercation between those involved in this dispute will be seen through the lens of that old narrative. It's possible that a weapon was present or not. In any case, one side claimed it was. And the place is still haunted by that memory. Take a peek at Hart's performance on live television. Hart got up, met Williams' gaze, and made an amicable offer on Netflix after Williams had scolded him. He expressed his desire to be both a friend and a brother. The crowd cheered. After years of animosity, the handshake and hug appeared to be the resolution that everyone had been waiting for. However, Hart undercut the entire situation in his last set. He claimed that since everyone had been criticizing him for being a poor actor that evening, people ought to watch that exchange again since it was the best acting he had ever done. He claimed he didn't mean a word of it. A handshake usually resolves a conflict. The neat conclusion is that. However, it is difficult to promote peace once the handshake is seen fraudulent in public. Every apology, statement, and attempt to proceed can be written off in the same manner after that. Why should anyone trust you now when you were performing? The Jackson case is the third pressure point because it takes Hart's credibility issue and brings it dangerously near to a legal fire, even though it is technically unrelated to Williams. Hart's former pal Jonathan Jackson claims that prosecutors received an email from Hart's staff that was actually written long after the extortion probe started. The lawsuit claims that 2 experts examined the metadata and concluded that Microsoft Word was used to construct the April 27, 2018 email on May 17, 2019. That music isn't just idle rumors. It is a particular assertion that is verifiable. If the accusation is accurate, the Los Angeles County District Attorney received fake evidence. Jackson is the one lying in court if it is untrue. In any case, Hart's credibility is simultaneously being put to the test in 2 different settings. In court, where records and timelines are important, and in public, where fans are debating character and intentions. Real violence has already reached Katt Williams' world while all of this is going on. Trenell Mars Williams, his security guard, was taken into custody when comedian Reggie Carroll was shot and killed. A building housing a product company connected to Katt Williams was the scene of the incident. Carroll and Williams have been on tour lately. It's important to note that there is no proof that Katt Williams was involved. However, the mood surrounding the narrative continues to change. He now faces criminal charges against a man who worked for him. The whole issue feels heavier when you consider that the most significant real-world escalation in 2018 involves a gun that may or may not have existed, and now someone close to Williams is charged with homicide. The atmosphere around it is no longer explained by jokes, interviews, or roast video. Reggie Carroll, a comedian from Baltimore, was shot in Mississippi. He was 52. According to reports, Reggie Carroll, who is adored as the knockout king of comedy, was shot last week. South Haven is where the reported shooting event happened. Why, therefore, hasn't the audience moved on? Since the supporters have divided into two armies, they are currently the ones sustaining the battle. Katt Williams is one of the last remaining truth-tellers, and the First Army thinks Kevin Hart is an industry plant. The Club Shay Shay interview, which had 83 million views, is their strongest piece of evidence. Williams claimed in that interview that he had prepared a well-thought-out attack intended to destroy the careers of all the people he mentioned. He cited Hart's starring role in Soul Plane and his sitcom during his first year in Los Angeles. Williams believed he had earned it. That appears to that camp to be Hollywood picking him ahead of time. Additionally, they contend that Hart accepted film roles in Jumanji, Ride Along, and Central Intelligence that were initially extended to Williams. Hart's direct counterargument is often overlooked by that side. You failed to arrive at work. Williams' own admission that the incident was premeditated is another issue they must deal with. He claimed to have done a mathematical calculation. That doesn't exactly seem like a momentary, innocent bystander's reaction. The Second Army has a whole different perspective. They believe Kevin Hart is being unfairly maligned, that Katt Williams is a nasty hypocrite. Their proof is simple to comprehend. Hart told The Breakfast Club that rather than accepting accountability for his own decisions, Williams continues to place the blame on Hollywood and white people. Williams had the shot, he claimed. He wasn't at work, but he was the guy. Additionally, there is a net worth difference of almost $448 million between them. There's what consistency looks like to their camp. They also note that Tiffany Haddish, Wanda Smith, and Kevin Hart are just a few of the successful persons Williams has targeted. They contend that his own actions, arrests, missing promo shoots, and becoming a risk to studios caused his career to slow down. However, that camp also has blind spots. The 83 million views did not appear overnight. Many people actually believe the story of the industry plant, and Hart's victimization is made more difficult by his own acting admission at the roast. People will doubt all you claim about being wronged after you reveal to the world that you staged the reunion. At the end of the day, I don't contribute to the stuff at all. To a certain extent, everything is entertaining. So all you can do is hope that people will be intelligent enough and possess a great deal of rationality. The entire thing is sustained by a softer layer of scandal. Williams made a joke at the roast about Hart attending Diddy parties and how he becomes silent when people bring it up because he did something bad. Hart immediately denied it. He claimed to have attended a party where Williams was also present. It was a brief, one-minute exchange on stage, but it stuck. That joke can now follow Hart anytime someone searches for his name. Despite the lack of proof linking him to any criminal activity, it links him to a much darker Hollywood controversy. This conflict song continues to expand outside of humor in this way. Something doesn't always travel because of proof. Sometimes all it takes to make someone memorable, and relatable is a single humorous statement. Williams is more aware of that than most people. Thus, this is the actual location of the dispute. The two armies are not even emotionally in agreement when they argue. They are debating which version of a man they believe to be more authentic. People who already think Hollywood is rigged and who yearn for honesty will almost always support Williams. Those that think that showing up, being disciplined, and being consistent are the keys to success will support Hart. Because of this, neither side is able to persuade the other. Although the debate appears to be factual on the surface, it is actually emotional. It is about what each fan should think about the industry, talent, access, success, and failure. Neither viewpoint is entirely correct or entirely incorrect. Some of those film roles were offered to Williams. Because he wished to alter the characters, he rejected them. Hart accepted, showed up, and became a $450 million brand. A conspiracy is not necessary for that section. Williams also makes a valid argument regarding how Hollywood develops and selects particular stars. Hard to get up quite quickly. The movie, the sitcom, and the machine all around him didn't look like the slow grind that most comedians talk about. People consistently return to that section. The larger story is that fans are fighting over which man they want to think is genuine rather than just facts. And the reason this conflict continues to rage is because of that desire for authenticity. No, neither before nor after that individual have we heard of that. What is a plant, in your opinion? Let's quit pretending that the audience's vote is the most important factor in this situation. The court documents are not being held by fans. It's not really about who people prefer in this story. It has to do with what is said in the records, what some witnesses have yet to speak in public, and what someone appears to want kept secret. The details begin to align in a way that should cause discomfort once you get past the humor in the podcast clips. Return to the Jackson complaint, but do not yet include the email. Examine the events leading up to the arrest. More than a dozen armed police officers broke down Jonathan Jackson's door in January 2018 while brandishing their weapons. He and his wife were inside when they stormed his house. According to Jackson's complaint, the foundation for that raid was an extortion report that relied on improperly vetted material. One detail is still not given adequate consideration. That day, Jackson was not taken into custody. 3 months later, on April 30th, 2018, he was taken into custody due to an additional email that purportedly received on April 27th. It is difficult to overlook the delay. People would wonder why it took 3 months if the evidence was that compelling. Take a peek at the results of that investigation. Later, on oath, Robin Lerno, the district attorney's investigator, acknowledged that the initial extortion message was not private. Jackson was never mentioned in the public comment that was made in response to Kevin Hart's video apology. In September 2019, during a preliminary hearing, such admission was made. One of the 2 extortion counts had already been dismissed by the prosecution by that point. The search warrant document is still in existence even though the case was eventually withdrawn. According to Jackson's side, the public remark was described as a private message. Perhaps someone misinterpreted the music they were listening to. Perhaps someone falsified information in order to obtain the warrant. In any case, Jackson and his spouse were detained at gunpoint due on information that, at best, seems to have been careless. At that time, the narrative begins to touch on a topic far more important than celebrity turmoil. Jackson is unwilling to overlook what appears to be a potential civil rights issue. In December 2024, he sued the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office for malicious prosecution. In response, the DA's office claimed they were entitled to immunity and asked the court to dismiss the case. Additionally, they maintained that Jackson had the video and emails attempting to sell it, as evidenced by the equipment that were taken from him. However, the original search warrant is the detail that keeps this alive. The investigator eventually acknowledged that the description of the extortion attempt that served as the basis for the raid was inaccurate. The depositions might be harsh if a court ever permits Jackson's case against the DA to proceed. Under oath, investigators would have to explain how a public statement became a private message. It is precisely the kind of institutional mess that offices dislike when it is brought to light. Take a look at what Hart's own court document acknowledges, as it reveals more than most people are aware. Investigators secured search warrants for AT&T and other internet service providers, according to Hart's attorney's declaration requesting arbitration. One warrant revealed that Jackson's IP address was used to log into the email address used for the extortion attempt. That seems like a horrible thing for Jackson. Then you inevitably wonder, when was that login? It is not stated in the file. Additionally, it claims that searches for a company that sells hidden cameras and a YouTube tutorial on how to set one up were found on a laptop that was taken from Jackson's house. That seems dubious. However, this does not show that Jackson sent the email on April 27th. The case revolves around that email. Additionally, Jackson's expert is the only forensic analysis that has been made public thus far. No competing forensics have been released by Hart's team. The IP address in the laptop history has been cited. While those information are significant, they are not the same as identifying the sender of the email. The settlement agreement itself comes next. This is the item that is hardly ever brought up while discussing the feud. Jackson and Hart signed a formal settlement in July 2021. Jackson didn't get paid for it. He claims that money was not a factor in the deal. It was about clearing his name, he said. According to the claimed terms of the deal, Hart had to publicly declare that all allegations against Jackson had been withdrawn, that he was not guilty, and that he had nothing to do with it. On October 27, 2021, Hart's genuine Instagram video stated that Jackson had been found not guilty and that the charges had been withdrawn, but it omitted the sentence that had nothing to do with it. According to Jackson's lawsuit, the omitted words were significant. Even without them, folks might still believe Jackson had some sort of involvement. Indeed, this has turned into a lawsuit over 4 words, and Hart is attempting to take the matter to arbitration because he does not want the jury to hear those 4 words read aloud. The case becomes particularly awkward when it comes to the investigation detail. The raw email metadata from Microsoft servers would be subpoenaed in a typical, clean investigation. The unidentified security guard from the 2018 parking lot incident would be removed. To find out exactly what investigators knew prior to requesting a court for that raid warrant, you would access the DA's internal files. We can observe how the struggle is being handled, but we are powerless to accomplish any of it from the outside. Every time a document has the potential to resolve a dispute, the case appears to move toward a more private environment. Hart desires arbitration. The DA desires immunity. The complete statement made by the security guard was never made public. When is combined, it begins to resemble a procedure that obscures some solutions rather than a quest for answers. What comes next, then? One of the 3 pressure tracks will most likely move first. The arbitration decision comes first. On September 30th, 2024, Hart submitted his request to either dismiss the lawsuit or send it to arbitration. The court has not yet made a decision. Jackson's case will go to a public trial if the judge rejects that move. And if that occurs, the IP logs, the email information, and the entire investigative chronology may be made public. Either Hart's counter-evidence or Jackson's fabrication claim is supported. In either case, a person's credibility suffers greatly. Music, it's difficult to picture both sides leaving that looking tidy. Jackson's malicious prosecution case against the DA's office is featured on the 2nd track. The litigation is still in its early phases. Discovery may compel the DA's office to provide internal correspondence regarding the raid if it overcomes a move to dismiss. At that point, you begin to learn who knew what and when. Jackson's claim that the initial prosecution was faulty is strengthened if the DA's office admits an error. The litigation might go on for years if is contested. However, since Hart was the one who gave investigators the first information, the procedure might result in papers that the public has never seen, such as music, and those records would also reflect on Hart. Although it is quieter, the 3rd track might be the fastest. Since Hart referred to the Rose handshake as the best acting of his career, Katt Williams has remained silent in public. Take a moment to consider that. After hugging the man with whom he had been at odds for years and shaking hands on stage, Williams watched Hart reveal to the public that it was all a hoax. Williams doesn't typically allow things like that to go unanswered. He has a habit of responding to perceived disrespect in unexpected ways. It will not be a casual sit-down interview. He will be questioned over the handshake, the acting remark, and whether he believes he was duped. Whatever he says has the potential to bring the rivalry back into the news. That portion is beyond Hart's control. Really, no one can. Are you aware of the top job for someone who sold their soul in Hollywood? What's the point of pretending it never happened? Additionally, there is a wild card that receives insufficient attention. The location of the Reggie Carroll shooting was not just any old building. It was home to Katt Williams' apparel and retail business. Trenell Williams and the company apparently received an eviction notice following the incident, citing criminal behavior on the property. The eviction notice is available to the public. It indicates that because of what transpired there, the landlord attempted to have them removed. Although it doesn't prove anything against Katt Williams, it does demonstrate that those in his immediate vicinity are now connected to a location where actual violence occurred. And that vibe is important in a feud that already has a history of gun accusations. The final scene was meant to be the roast. That's how it appeared anyway. The olive branch was extended by Hart. Williams agreed. The crowd cheered, but Hart was unable to stop it. It was acting, he informed everyone. He needed to demonstrate that he was aware of the joke. And by doing that, he gave himself yet another issue. He made it more difficult to sell sincerity. People can now ask the same question whenever he makes a serious statement regarding the Jackson issue, the feud, or anything related to it. Is he acting again, or is this C authentic? Furthermore, it will be difficult to respond to that question because he raised it himself. Thus, this is the current situation. It's possible that the gun wasn't present. It's possible that the email was fake. It's possible that the handshake wasn't genuine. However, the strain surrounding all of this is genuine and will not go away. Which section gives first is the question at hand. Does a judge decide to hold a public trial in the Jackson case? In order to evade discovery, does the DA's office reach a settlement with Jackson? Or does Katt Williams eventually decide he's had enough of keeping quiet and tell everyone how this conflict got so bad in the first place? Tell me, is Hart insulating himself from a serious lawsuit? Or is he simply more adept at pretending to be innocent than people are willing to acknowledge? Music, in all honesty. When will Williams finally speak? Leave a remark. All of this is being observed by us. Let's talk shortly.